Hey, what's up everybody? Thank you for joining me for another video on this channel. Once again, I want to give a shout out to all those who have been participating and letting me know who the player of the day is. So there's another one up there for you. If you know who that is, if you're the first one to let me know, I'll shout you out in the next video. All right, let's get right into it. This is a game from Bobby Fischer. Fischer has the black pieces, so this is why I have the board orientated this way. And he's playing Canadian Grandmaster Duncan Suttles. This is from the Palma de Mallorca Interzonal 1970. This is Fischer at his absolute peak, ladies and gentlemen. So enjoy. E4, knight f6, Alekhine defense, e5, knight d5, d4, d6, c4, knight b6, exchange variation, and c takes d6. The other pawn capture is also possible, but it leads to a little bit more passive positions. All right, c takes d6 gives you a little bit more dynamic possibilities. All right, think Sicilian. Bishop e3, g6. Suttles plays a simple plan of simply gaining space and exchanging off black's powerful bishop. Bishop d4. Bishops come off the board, but black has a slight lead in development. Knight c3 and e5. Now white would love to be able to capture and play en passant here, but the problem is since he is slightly behind in development, he won't be able to exploit black's resulting isolated pawn. Right, black actually winds up getting a good game. So for example, d takes e6 here, bishop takes e6 is possible. Let's say castles queenside with pressure on the isolated pawn. Knight c6, queen d6, and black can just either trade here if he's feeling conservative and just wants to go for an easy game. He can just trade off everything, as you can see, or he can even play more dynamically himself with the move like queen g5, keeping the queens on the board and bringing rooks to d8 and c8. All right, for a more combative game. Knight f3 is also an option, but again, black's always able to exploit the fact that the king is in the middle and the queen is in the game a little bit early. So for instance, in this line, queen e7, bishop e2, and you can exploit the fact that the king is in the middle of the board still. So here after e5 from Fischer, Suttles just went back and played queen d2. f5 from Fischer and knight f3 now from Suttles. Another interesting idea is h4, trying to exploit black's lack of a dark squared bishop and also the weakening of the king side with those pawn advances. Knight f3, knight 8 d7, castles queenside, and now queen f6. Suttles plays queen h7, and you can see I have the board highlighted, and I wanted to show you that knight g5 is a threat here, and not only because it threatens mate, but also it has the idea of bringing the knight to e6, right? And that can be very annoying for black. So Fischer drops his queen back to e7. Suttles then played rook to e1, e4 from Fischer, and now Suttles played knight d2. Also possible in natural is knight d4 with equal play. And of course, you can see the idea of coming into e6 again. And black here can play knight c5 or knight e5, but for illustrative purposes, knight c5, and let's say queen d2 here. And the game is pretty equal. It's hard for white to really develop any kind of initiative here. For example, if he tries to crack open the center here and exploit the placement of the queen on e7, then black just simply goes to f6 with this queen, and you can see that the knight on d4 is hanging. So there's no real decent square for the knight. So the queen will go back. Black can capture. And again, you have an equal game here. So knight d2 was played. And now knight e5 from Fischer. h3 to prevent knight g4. Knight bd7. Queen e3. Queen h4 from Fischer. And now g3. Queen f6. King b1 from Suttles and knight c5. And here Suttles decides to make a committal move in the position. He plays the move f4. h4 again is on the menu for sure. Good idea. Suttles plays f4 here. Fischer takes en passant. Right? It's important to keep that pawn majority mobile. Knight takes f3 and f4 from Fischer. G takes f4, and now Fischer does not rush to recapture the pawn, and the following moves are very instructive. So knight takes f3 from Fischer. Queen takes f3 from Suttles. Queen h4. Again, he does not rush to capture the pawn, but instead he just continues to escalate and enhance the pressure in the position. Here he's attacking the rook on e1. See, if he takes the pawn right now, which is playable, it really releases the tension in the position, and this is to White's favor because White was under a lot of pressure, and in this situation, you know, the game is quickly heading for a draw. There's really nothing in the position for White to worry about. By making these moves, Fischer is just tightening the screws in the position and giving giving White problems to solve in the position constantly. So bishop e2, he still doesn't capture the pawn. He just develops bishop f5 check, king a1, and now Fischer brings his last piece into the game. Rook c1. And now bishop e4. This is forces things, as you can see. White does not want to lose the exchange for nothing. And so knight takes e4. Rook takes e4. And now you can see again highlighted the pressure in the position. That pawn is weak on f4, and Fischer's not in a rush to get it. Rook h2, and now finally he captures. Queen c3, Queen e7, and Fischer goes on a beautiful journey and shows us how he uses the initiative here. So now you can see the bishop on e2 is being harassed, and also there's pressure on the c pawn. So bishop f1, more of the initiative. Rook e3 hitting the queen. So now White is in this cycle of having to respond to the demands of Black. So rook e3, queen d2, rook ef3. Again, now we're threatening to take the bishop on f1. So rook e2, hitting the queen. Queen f6. And this is why I chose to show you this game, is because Fischer brings in Alekhine's gun to the Alekhine's defense. And I thought that was pretty cool. Only a player of Fischer's caliber could arrange such a visual spectacle for us today. So we had the Alekhine's gun here. For you newbies who don't know what that is, the Alekhine's gun is exactly what you see highlighted on the screen. You have the two rooks in the front. The queen is backing up the two rooks. All right. Any other order is not the Alekhine's gun proper. The queen is always in the rear, being the last piece to capture. And it's a very powerful setup, and it's called the Alekhine's gun. And like I said, it's very cool because we are in the midst of an Alekhine's defense. So here Fischer again is harassing that bishop. on f1. So bishop g2, and now Fischer just continues to tighten the screws in the position. After, for instance, rook takes f2 from white, the other rook that Fischer has in Alekhine's gun will go to f2, harass the queen, and harass the bishop at the same time. So once the queen defended from mate, say queen c3 or something like that, or b4, queen c3 or queen b4, then the rook on g2 would fall. This is why Suttles has to leave the pawn on c4 undefended to save the bishop. So he plays rook ce1. Fischer makes some exchanges, and rook takes c4. And what I like about Fischer's play is that he doesn't rush to make the exchanges. He waits till like all of the everything is at maximum tension and pressure, and basically the opponent is forced to make some type of concession, and then Fischer will make the capture. So here he's up a pawn, and now watch Fischer's next move. So queen e3 by Suttles, and now Fischer plays queen e5, and he forces this exchange now because he's up a pawn, and now he's willing to go into a superior endgame where Fischer's knight is superior to Suttles' bishop, and he's threatening, of course, a back rank mate if Suttles is foolish enough to capture the queen on e5. King b1, queen takes e3, and now we're in our last phase of the game. Rook f4. This prohibits white from any nonsense on the 7th and 8th ranks coming and trying to check and all of that. Fischer's rook will be right there to defend. Bishop f3. So of course Fischer now is ready to march those pawns. h5. King to c2. King f7. King d2. Rook b4. Attacking the pawn, of course. Rook h4, attacking the h pawn now. And now b4, driving the knight away, but the knight has a good place to go. Bishop e2 and knight f6. Again, harassing weakness in the white position. And now rook f3. And what's beautiful about this position right here is the rook on h4 has the white king on c3 blocked off from being able to protect the pawn that is on d5. What does that mean? That means now white has to use a piece to protect the pawn, which means the piece is going to be passive, and therefore black can march his 2-to-1 majority up the board without really being harassed that much. Because if you're pawn down, you really need some type of activity or dynamism to compensate for the pawn deficit. So if your pieces are stuck guarding a pawn and you're a pawn down, that's big trouble. So king g7, rook d3, and here's the march. Notice the rook is super passive on d3. a3, g4, bishop f1, knight e4 check, king c2. Beautiful chess by Fischer. Simple fork. Knight f2, threatening the rook, of course, and threatening to just capture the pawn and just exchange twice and go into a king and pawn ending. So rook e3, last ditch effort at counterplay from white. Fischer captures, and now rook e7 and king f8, and Suttles just resigned. Reason why he resigned was because after king f8, let's say rook e2, then just simply rook f4, bishop takes, and of course he would just be down a piece. Another variation is king f8, and let's say he tries to just grab some pawns. Rook takes b7 again. He's just going to be down a piece at the end of the day, and Fischer is still going to wind up queening. So very powerful tour de force there by Fischer, just showing how strong he was at his peak. I mean, nobody had a chance he was definitely very far above his rivals. Anytime somebody asks me who I think the greatest player of all time is, I always have to say that I judge players in their own time period. And what I mean is I try to judge them. I judge who the best players were by their dominance over their contemporaries, because nobody can get in a time machine and go back to Morphy's day or whatever. And then, of course, you have all this weird stuff like, oh, if Morphy could use computers or Fischer can use computers, all of this stuff is impossible. But what you can look at factually is you can always look at a player's dominance over his contemporaries. So I asked the audience this question: in your opinion, and based on your knowledge, who was the most dominant player over their contemporaries? Now, you have Morphy. Again, we're not talking about, oh, was Morphy strong? Was he not strong? Or, those players were weak back then. No, they're all in the same time period. So they all had access to the same technology. So was Morphy more dominant over his contemporaries? Was Kasparov more dominant over his? What about Magnus Carlsen? What about Fischer? Okay, so in my opinion, I think Fischer was the most dominant over his contemporaries at his peak. He was the most dominant. So I have Fischer, then Paul Morphy, right neck and neck, as far as being the most dominant over their contemporaries. So that's a fun debate to have. But that is it for this video. Again, I hope you enjoyed this Alekhine's gun video in the Alekhine's defense. I hope that you like and subscribe. Please check the links below. There's like some Alekhine defense videos, DVDs, maybe some books down there. Also a donation link. Please support my channel. Hit the thumbs up, share, and Twitter and social media and all that stuff like that, so that my videos could be seen by everyone. So I will see you guys soon. Again, if you know who that player is, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys soon on the next video.